Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Chris DeShawn, the Regional Director of Sales and Marketing with Anthem Memory Care. I'll be your moderator for this evening, along with Nicole Bartecki, who's Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Anthem. Thank you for joining our second webinar of our 12-month series tonight. Tonight, we will be learning about the lobes of the brain and the impact dementia has on those lobes. Our program will be recorded and can be found on our Anthem YouTube page in the coming week. Please keep your microphones off until the Q&A portion. And if we do hear background noise, we will mute you from our end. I also recommend if you have any questions during this time, please use the chat feature. I'll be moderating the chat feature and we can ask those questions to Dr. Tam during the webinar. So, we bring to you tonight a legend in dementia training, Dr. Tam Cummings. Dr. Tam, as she is known in the dementia community, is a practicing gerontologist who has devoted her professional career to educating both professionals and family caregivers. In 2009, she founded the Dementia Association with a mission to inspire, educate, and empower dementia caregivers. At Anthem, we utilize her transformative work, including the Itty Bitty Dementia book, in our daily conversations with families. If you do not have your copy of the Itty Bitty Dementia book, you can find it on Amazon. Families, professionals, and caregivers, it is an honor for me to present to you Dr. Tam.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Anthem. And again, thank you for bringing information out to families. The more people we get educated about this disease, the easier we make their journey. And as we all know as professionals, this is a terribly difficult journey. So with that being said, I want to teach you a trick. Now, Nicole, I was going down the road yesterday and all of a sudden my car tells me I've got an email, and I then had to get gas and my phone did just that. And
I'm listening to this web thing. Can I call you back in about an hour? Okay.
So I pull into the gas station to get gas and I look to see what my email is, and it's a woman whose husband has just been placed on silver alert and he's missing and she doesn't know what to do, and she's on the other side of the country and I have no idea what I can do for her. But I call her and I talk to her for a little bit and then we hang up, and I got about 10 minutes down the road and I thought, she was really, really on fire. I need to call her back and do better. So I called her back and I did Greenstone's awesome icebreaker with you. And if you're in your home right now, leave this on where you can hear it and go do this technique. Nicole, when you and I think too much about something, when we begin to go into the future, well, what if, and that's anxiety, or we're back here going coulda, woulda, shoulda, and that's depression, our brain begins to open too many windows. And it finally opens enough windows that you and I get stuck. And this woman was stuck. The sheriff didn't know where her husband was. They knew he was somewhere across the border in another state. He would call occasionally, but they couldn't ping his phone fast enough. And so when I called her back, I said, I want you to go to the refrigerator. And that's what I want you to do right now. Go to the freezer and get a piece of ice. Go over to your sink. Wrap the piece of ice tightly in one hand. Shut your eyes, breathing through your nose only. Take 10 deep breaths. On the 7th breath, Nicole, your hand is going to begin to burn because the ice is cold enough that it's now doing a freeze burn on your hand. And your brain is really, really freaking out at this point because you've got something in your hand that's burning, that's cold, that's freezing, that's drippy, that's wet, and is just unpleasant. But in the process of figuring out what is happening with that ice in your hand, your brain had to shut down all of those windows with all of that stuff. So on about the 7th breath, you'll drop the ice because your hand is burning. You'll finish with 3 more nice, deep, slow breaths, and you will literally feel yourself calm down. So take a picture of the screen, write this technique down. This technique is in the Itty Bitty Dementia book, but use this technique when you find yourself being overwhelmed. We use it in communities when we have somebody pass. We use it to help our staff calm down, to help deal with grief. We use it when we're upset. The problem is remembering to do it. So I called the woman back and I had her do this technique while I waited on the phone. And when she got back on the phone, she went, well, now that was amazing. That was absolutely amazing. She said, now I need to sit and wait for the police and there's nothing else I can do. And so she went to get comfortable on the couch and try to relax as best she could. So remember to use Greenstone's awesome icebreaker as a way to trick your brain into calming down. Now, these are the lobes of the brain. You have one set on each side. You have 4 major lobes and 3 minor lobes. The lobes on this side run this side of the body. The lobes on this side run this side of the body. That's why if a person has a stroke and is impaired on their left side, we automatically know the stroke occurred on the right side of their brain. Now, each of these lobes is responsible for certain things you and I are able to do as humans. And when each of these lobes become damaged, the behavior of that human will change because the lobe that controls that behavior is now damaged. Therefore, the lobe cannot operate correctly. Therefore, the behavior's changed. It's actually by watching the behaviors in your loved one that we're able to determine their pain level, how advanced the disease is, what lobes the disease now is into. We're able to do so much work with your loved one just by observation, by understanding what each of these lobes do. And in my method of thinking, we need to first understand what dementia is, and we did that last week. And now we're going to understand how each of these lobes work and help you understand that when your loved one begins to do that behavior that's driving you out of your mind, it's not being done on purpose, it's being done because of brain damage. And if that can help you bring your stress level down, help you bring your family member's stress level down. And remember, people with dementia feed off your behavior. So if you're stressed out, they're stressed out. So if you're agitated, they're agitated. But if you're singing and happy, you're most likely to help them be singing and happy. But for anything in the brain to work, and for you and I to know information, this piece right in the middle called hippocampus must function. And if the hippocampus doesn't function, then the person is not able to make or use short-term memory. Now, hippocampus is a Greek word meaning seahorse, and it's because that little green area looks just like a seahorse. So as you look at the screen now, can you see the seahorse? Because for some people, it helps if you turn your head sideways. And Nicole, I'm deeply ashamed. Chris, please forgive me. That's not true. I just like to see at a live conference how many people turn their heads sideways, because then it looks like the wave as they all pop up. But you can see the actual hippocampus really does look like a seahorse. And of course, everybody knows the seahorse is the one on the right side with the eyeball, but it actually does look like a seahorse. Now, when the hippocampus becomes damaged, your loved one begins to ask the same questions over and over and over and over. It'll even look to you as though they are doing this behavior exactly at this moment to annoy you. But what it should mean to you, what it means to me, what it means to Nicole and Chris and all of the others when we see it, it means the hippocampus is severely damaged. And so the conversation can very easily be something like this. Nicole, do you know when my doctor's appointment is?
You have a doctor's appointment at 3 p.m.
3 p.m. Okay. Now, as you're watching this video, I made eye contact with Nicole. I got the information. I shook my head yes, which indicates I got the information. But a few minutes later, I say, when's my doctor's appointment?
It's at 3 p.m.
Now, I don't know if you noticed it at home, but there was a slight change in Nicole's voice. And that's not Nicole being mean, that's human nature. As humans all around the world, we give you 3 shots at information. The first time she happily told me, your doctor's appointment's at 3. She practically sang, butterflies flew, doves took off. The second time I got this very short and a little edge on it, it's at 3. The next time I ask her, Nicole will give me the answer all human beings around the world give you, which is, I already told you that answer. But because my hippocampus is damaged, I don't realize she's already done that. So I think Nicole is being mean to me. So I respond because her behavior is now mean. So I'm going to ramp up my behavior to match hers because now I'm scared. And I say, no, you didn't. Nicole, meanwhile, has already answered the same question for me 9,000 times, and it's only 10 o'clock in the morning. So Nicole has had enough. And Nicole finally decides to stand her ground. And she says, no, I didn't. I told you it was at 3 o'clock. Well, I continue to feed off her anger, and I say, no, you didn't. And she says, yes, I did. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. Yes, you did. No, you didn't. Yes. And it becomes like Bugs Bunny. And suddenly I get so upset I leave. Now, a lot of times people that aren't around dementia people don't understand that they're not lazy people. They're busy, energetic people. You may have a hunter or a gatherer. They go from room to room to room in communities or in your home looking for neat new things to find. And when they find them, they pick them up and they take them someplace else where they hide them. Maybe you have Goldilocks. Goldilocks goes from room to room to room, trying out beds until she finds a bed that's just right. And she takes a nap. When she wakes up, she comes back and there's Nicole. And I'm so happy to see Nicole because she knows the answer to the question. When is my doctor's appointment? And the game starts all over again. Now, when we do it here, it's funny. But when you get asked 9,000 times a day, when is my doctor's appointment, it wears on you. And so what you have to remember is your loved one is not pretending. They're not acting like. They're not showing off. They're not lying. They simply have brain damage. And the brain damage in Alzheimer's disease starts at the very top of the brain up here in the motor cortex and then moves into the hippocampus. And by the time your loved one begins to repeat questions, ask the same information over and over again, tell the same story over and over and over again, and that's going to go from a period of time of about repeating everything over an hour to where we're repeating things every few minutes. Those are indicators that the disease has progressed to stage 5, and that not only is the hippocampus gone, but a half a pound of brain tissue is gone as well. So your loved one's repetition of information, questions, actions is all an indicator of quite significant brain damage. Well, I thought I clicked something, but I didn't click. There I clicked. Now, I'm just going to go through the brain from the front to the back. It's not in any particular order. The type of dementia a person has actually determines the order in which it moves through the brain. But the frontal lobes are these lobes, the ones you hold for a headache, the ones where you think everything's coming apart for the day. It's the part of the brain that makes you, you, and me. This is my speech, imagination, judgment, rational thought, facial recognition, memory, impulse control. Impulse control is what stops you from doing or saying every single thing you've ever thought. But if you really want to know, does that dress make me look fat? Go into a dementia community and ask the ladies, and they will happily tell you, yes, it does. If you want to know if your haircut looks stylish, go into a dementia community and ask the ladies. They'll tell you it looks terrible. You look like a man. If you have a new baby, and I'm begging you, don't do this because this one's going to hurt. You take that baby into a dementia community and they will tell you that is the ugliest baby they have ever seen. And that can really hurt you. So when we are training staff, when we are working with our staff, one of the things that we want to most make sure they understand is that frontal lobe damage means this person is going to say whatever they think. And Nicole in her career and me in my career over and over run into people that are great caregivers. Doesn't mean they can do dementia care. And a lot of times people think that because of this behavior, because of the things their person says to a professional caregiver, they think we're going to retaliate. And the reality is we don't do that. We understand that it's brain damage. This isn't who your person was. This is what happens with brain damage. Now, all sorts of things are going on as this lobe is damaged. And a lot of these things, especially impulse control, are going to make you want to correct your loved one. And you have to remember the damaged human brain doesn't realize it's damaged. So every time you correct me, all you do is make me more angry, because to me, it feels like you're picking on me. And you think you're helping, but you're not. And it's because Take impulse control. Those of you who are parents have seen impulse control before. You saw it when you took a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old out to a place they'd never been before, and they saw a person that didn't look like anybody they knew. And your child did not lean over and ask you, "Mother dearest, can you please tell me, thy young child, as I cast my eye that way, why is that fellow so peculiar and so odd?" Your child didn't do that. Your child said, "Mama, how come that guy so," and you couldn't get your hand across their face fast enough. The reason is their brain was growing, but in your loved one, their brain is dying. So we don't shame them. We don't correct them. We don't fuss at them. This is brain damage. On facial recognition, it's not us that they're not recognizing. It's you. We wear name tags because the state requires us to, because your loved one for a while can continue to read our names and may not remember us, but can read our names because they still remember reading. The people that they don't realize or recognize who they are anymore are you, the family member. As a parent or as a spouse, you may become their mother or father as their brain damage increases. A son may become his mother's husband, may be who she thinks he is. She may think her daughter is her mother, her aunt, or her grandmother. As the brain damage continues in this area, they're going to begin to put you into the file of somebody that you most look like, because the files on you as their adult children have been destroyed. And all of this happens because of brain damage, not because they don't love you. And so you have to remember that judgment is impaired. One of the people that I talked to last week, her husband had been an engineer, so she didn't want to take away the computer, but at the same breath, she told me she was scared to death he was going to get in a scam and get rid of all their money, and they have a significant amount of money. And even if they didn't, it's still something dangerous. So you have to do things constantly that feel to you like bit by bit you're taking away their independence, but what you're really doing is keeping them safe. Did that make sense, Nicole?
It does, yes.
You ever seen anybody tell you exactly what they think of you in that outfit?
Oh my gosh, all the time. All the time, especially when you think you look really cute.
That's what hurts, right?
Yep.
You got out of the car, you got to work, you were doing your stuff, you were being so good, and you were thinking that whole time, I look good. And then they got you. And it'll bring you right down. It'll bring you right down. Now, the temporal lobes are the lobes on the side of the brain. And this one is hard because families can get confused and think it's the hearing aid. And as the disease progresses, the hearing aid no longer has any value. It's the damage to the lobes that translate what was coming through the ear. And once those are damaged, the hearing aids don't work anymore because they can't control the brain function. You should be aware, anybody wearing hearing aids, glasses, dentures, they're going to throw them away in stage 6, but they don't just throw them away where you can see them. They wrap them in tissue and wrap them in tissue and wrap them in tissue, and then they tuck them down in the trash where we will never find them. So you need to be aware of that. But the temporal lobes are very, very unique. The left side is believed to be formal language, how you and I speak with one another. The right side is believed to control music, singing, cursing, and forbidden words. And because of that, and something we don't understand, the left side dies first. These parts of the brain are also related to smell, especially the ability to smell sweets is left. And then memory has some damage to some motor functions. But the big thing for families is that you've never heard your loved one curse and they suddenly begin to curse. You've never heard your loved one use the N-word and suddenly you hear them use the N-word and you're afraid people are going to retaliate. You're afraid people are going to be mad at them. One of the worst things is you're afraid that God has forsaken them and now they're going to go to hell, and that's not it at all. It's brain damage. As far as the N-word, our staff are professionals. They understand what comes with doing this job, but it's not just the N-word. you and I have quite a vocabulary of curse words. Nicole, I've had families tell me that their mother doesn't know any curse words, and I have always wondered what planet she was raised on, because we all know the curse words. We've just been taught not to use them. I've had somebody tell me their father didn't know the curse words because he was a pastor. And that didn't make sense to me because I knew he wasn't born a pastor. And again, we all know the curse words. And in case you don't, I'll review them for you now. Are you ready, Nicole?
I am.
Okay, you got 3A words, 4B words, 3C words, 4D words, 6F words. You've got an H word that sounds like a W word, and a W word that sounds like an H word. You got an L word, a K word. You've got a G word. You've got another F word you didn't even think about. You've got some P words, some M words, some S words, some T words. If you put those T words and S words together with those A words and B words and D words, you can get a whole nother set of words. You got an M word. You got lots of words. And you've also got things like fat, ugly, things that you and I were taught not to say about people. But when your loved one begins to use that language, it doesn't mean they're being bad. It means the disease has progressed. And again, we don't understand why. We just understand that formal language is lost. Most of the time, formal language is lost before singing and cursing. And that's why your loved one can still do music, but then turn around and curse you, but then turn around and sing all the words to Amazing Grace. It's brain damage. Now, the occipital lobe translates what you're seeing. It's what allows you to see yourself in space and time, what is called visual spatial function. It's what allows you to walk around or drive around without hitting things. When I go up to someone's house to meet them for the first time, one of the first things I do is walk around their car to see how many dings it has on it, because that tells me going in the door, this person's already got occipital damage because they're banging into things. Depth perception is our ability to see things three-dimensionally, and people with dementia begin to, in the end, only see things one-dimensionally. Everything is flat, like these pictures behind me. Visual acuity, being able to see things in focus, begins to change. Facial recognition begins to change again. It's not us. They don't know it's you. And it's because at that point, the disease is now in the occipital lobe, the temporal lobe, and the frontal lobes, and that's where facial recognition of family is. And that's why your mother doesn't know you. That's why your loved one doesn't know you. It's not love or being mad at you. It's brain damage. And as this happens, your person can literally have something right in front of them and not be able to see it. And that's everything from a plate of food to the remote control or the telephone. They cannot see things that are right in front of them, and that's normal. And again, this isn't glasses, this is brain damage. The parietal lobes are pain, touch, taste, and temperature. This is the crown of your head. And what we know about this lobe is your loved one may or may not feel pain, but their behaviors tell us they're in pain. And that's why we use a tool called PAIN-AD, which stands for Pain Assessment in Advanced Dementia. And those of you who are parents will look at it and go, hey, I did the same thing with my baby. Yes, you did, but we put words to it and scored it. That is what we use to see if a person with dementia is suffering pain. And what you have to realize is if you're in your 40s, you're actually in your 5th decade of life. If you're in your 50s, you're in your 6th decade of life. If you're in your 60s, you're in your 7th decade of life. Each decade of life brings another level of pain. And if you don't advocate for it, your loved one may not get daily routine pain medicine. And that's really important. I have arthritis and I hurt every single day, Nicole, not just occasionally. Occasionally I hurt worse. But I don't have dementia and I know to take my medicine. So you've got to make sure your loved one gets routine daily pain medicine just for the aches and pains of life. Touch remains, tactile sensation remains until the end. That's why Anthem does so many tactile touch sensory activities with stage 7 people. The body temperature begins to drop in people with dementia, the normal temperature of 98.6. normal temperature in dementia is between 95 and 97 degrees. So they really are colder than you and I are. And that's why even in Texas in August, we see people with dementia dressed like they're about to walk out into a snowstorm, and it's because they can't get their body warm enough. As you go into the holidays, one of the things I get asked is, what do I give my dementia person? Give them ski silks, give them sweatsuits, give them things to keep them warm. And then taste. Your loved one is left with the ability to taste and smell sweets. And that is why in dementia care, we believe eat dessert first. Give them their sweets. We're looking for calories. We're not looking for peas and carrots. Your loved one has a terminal brain disease. We want them to eat and be as happy as they can. And what they enjoy most, what they can taste, is sweet things. That's why you see so many of the foods flavored to be on the sweeter side. I have a cantankerous computer tonight. The medulla oblongata helps with all sorts of things, but now we're starting to get back down to primitive brain. And I include the medulla oblongata in here because it's one of the minor lobes, but it's for this reason. A stage 5 person, that is called moderately severe dementia. That is when a person should be in memory care. In the beginning of stage 5, they have the equivalency of a 12-year-old. By the end of stage 5, a 4-year-old. This person, in spite of this kind of brain damage, still doesn't look sick. So we call stage 5 people all dressed up and ready to go. Ladies have on their lipstick, men have their combs and their wallets, their shirts are tucked in, their belts are on, ladies have their purses and their scarves. But stage 6 people look sick. The person has now lost a pound of brain tissue, and they no longer stand up straight or walk straight. They're now hunched over. They're shuffling as they walk. Even an outsider seeing them would say that person has dementia. They look sick. And you notice that they begin to have a tic, a tremor. Now, your most common thought is they've developed Parkinson's, but they haven't. It's a Parkinsonian effect. So it's not actually related to dopamine. It's related to blood damage, to brain damage. So when your stage 6 person begins to have a tremor, what it means is that the disease has reached the medulla oblongata. And when your loved one begins to have trouble chewing and swallowing food, it means that the disease has reached the brainstem. So what you see is that everything that is occurring in the person with dementia is all directly related back to their brain, back to the lobe of the brain. Add in their age, add their sex, add their personality, add the kind of person that they were, and you begin to see how the disease has begun to affect people. And that is the cause for your loved one's behaviors, not because they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing or doing something to hurt you or harm you. Now, because of this damage in the lobes, it also means that the 5 senses are damaged. Now, hearing, we touched on briefly, hearing is damaged because the temporal lobes are damaged. So there's an inability to track sound, an inability to translate sound, and that's everything from, that's a fire truck behind me, I need to move over, to somebody's telling me to come here, to duck. It's an inability to translate sound, including language. There's an inability to track sound. I said good morning to a lady one day, Nicole, and I watched her do this. I said, good morning, and she went, because she couldn't figure out where the sound was coming from, and I was directly in front of her. There's also an inability to hear higher pitches. Now, my voice is naturally high-pitched, so I have to make certain when I speak to a person with dementia that I pay enough attention to lower the pitch of my voice, because as we age, these little brittle things in our ear don't vibrate as easily. So lower pitches come through clearer. And that's why your loved one may respond to a lower pitched voice when with you they didn't seem to hear you. They retain an ability to taste and smell sweets. And That's why you may see a nurse putting syrup on scrambled eggs. You may see a lot of barbecue sauce used. And of course, I mean Texas barbecue sauce. It's full of sugar, not North Carolina barbecue sauce that has vinegar in it. Don't use that. Use Texas barbecue sauce. But we use jams and jellies and honeys and sugar. We use sugar rubs. We use all sorts of sweet things. Ketchup is very sweet. All things to get your person to eat more of their food. But at the end of the day, as the disease progresses, we're interested only in calories, because we know if your loved one gains 10 to 20 pounds in stage 5, we're doing our job, because in stage 6, the weight loss will start and they will lose 1/3 to 1/2 of their body weight. And I want to know that in stage 5, they enjoyed eating as best I can. So we want to make sure that they're able to enjoy foods. Otherwise, if we don't do that, they're not going to eat. And because of damage up here, they're going to tell Nicole she doesn't know how to cook and she's serving bad food. And the reality is we got to make it a little sweeter for them. In terms of touch and tactile sensation, this is a normal thing to see. So as you're watching this video, everybody do this. Just rub the tips of your fingers. This is a natural human self-soothing behavior, and it's called pilling. This is something that is seen in stage 5 of the disease process. Now, Americans don't really have worry beads like they do in other countries. We don't have worry stones like they do in other cultures where people do sit and rub stuff. We have Catholics who have a rosary, and that's about as close as we get. But we know that somebody doing this is simply trying to do a self-soothing behavior. So if I do it for a few minutes, I'm self-soothing. If I'm doing it for hours, I need to be evaluated for anxiety. And it's the same thing with rubbing. If you see someone rubbing their arms, their forearms, or rubbing their thighs, they're self-soothing. It's tactile sensation. It feels good. It's making them calm down. Same thing with rocking. But if I do it too long, I'm not self-soothing. I have anxiety that needs anti-anxiety medication with it. Folding behaviors, we really don't understand. We thought at one point that it was something that women had learned as girls from their mothers, but we have men who do it as well. So we're not sure, but this is what we do know. If you walk into a community and you see somebody at Anthem sitting with a basket folding washcloths or putting together black socks and white socks, they are not doing the building's laundry. That's actually an activity for people with dementia. Even with dementia, you need to be needed, whether it's watering an ivy plant or whether it's folding a box of socks. And those socks simply get unfolded. Those washcloths get messed back up again. They get put in the closet and we do it again tomorrow. It gives them something to do. Same thing if you come in and you see people doing this with a cloth on a table. They're not actually doing the housekeeping. Ladies usually are dusting because that's something that they would have done in their home. And it's just a normal thing for them to be doing. Other odd folding behaviors that we see, that you may see in your loved one, they will take all of the tissue out of a box and neatly fold it in squares and put it in a drawer. They will take toilet paper apart square by square and neatly fold it and put it in a drawer. They also make lists and neatly fold them. Now, Nicole, I hate to say list because some people are list makers. They make lists to go to the shopping center. They make lists of what they need to go do or have accomplished today. That's not what I'm talking about. People with dementia make lists of their children's names over and over again, trying to remember them. They make lists of their phone number and address over and over again and neatly fold it and put it away. And these are just some of the folding behaviors that we see. And we see those lists neatly folded when it's time to move someone into memory care. That's typically what will be found in their drawers. Does that make sense?
It does, yes.
Now, if you were paying attention, vision wasn't on the slide of the five senses. So if you paid attention, you caught me. It's because so many changes happen with vision. Now, in normal aging, around the age of 75, you begin to lose peripheral vision. The most common cause of accidental death in people over the age of 75 is being T-boned at a stop sign or a red light because of the loss of peripheral vision. You didn't see the other car coming. But in dementia, this is more pronounced and begins earlier because of brain damage. So if you're watching with me, this will make more sense if you do the exercise with me. And since I can't see you, I can't make you, but please do the exercise. It'll help you understand what your loved one is going through. So first, put up your peripheral vision blockers. And what you should notice is that everything on either side of you disappeared. And to talk to somebody, you have to turn your neck. So when I'm in a community looking at your loved one, I'm looking to see who turns their neck to talk to their person next door to them. After loss of peripheral vision comes periscope vision. So put your thumb tips together and your fingertips together and bring them up to where you're only seen through a periscope. And as you do that, look across a table and tell me if you can see your food. So what a person with dementia will do when periscope vision occurs is they can't see their food, but they can see the food across the table. And they have frontal lobe damage. They can't help but notice that that lady's got pie, and how come I didn't get pie, and she's fat, I should have the pie. So you know what, I'll just stand up and get the pie. And you, the daughter, are horrified because your mother just stood up at a table and reached across and took someone else's food. And you think, oh no, look at mom's crazy. You're witnessing brain damage. After periscope vision comes binocular vision. And binocular vision means they only see as though they're looking through a binocular. So you look at all you see on your full visual field, it's all around you. And to suddenly have it be like this is quite frightening. If you're somewhere where you can look down a hallway or look through a longer room, notice how different that vision appears to you once you have to do it with binoculars on. And that should also indicate to you that your person can't see you when you're approaching them. So you've got to make sure you come in the front of their eyes. And then some people in stage 6 of the disease will lose vision in their left eye, and this is called occipital blindness. And it's not because they need a new pair of glasses, it's because of brain damage. The right occipital lobe can no longer take a signal from the left eye, and this is actually how that person sees. And so once vision begins to change, it means movement changes for them. If I am pushing someone in a wheelchair, I have to go at a different pace. If I'm walking by someone, I have to really slow down when I'm near them, because otherwise all they see is a blur go by. And Nicole, that would be scary to see that all day long. So we have to slow down as we move around dementia people. For years, I would come down a hallway, and as I came down, I would tell the person with dementia I'm coming, and I would tap them on the shoulder to let them know I was there, and then I would keep going. And it wasn't until we realized how their vision changed that I realized for 10 years I had been scaring the daylights out of people, because all they felt was a ghosty touch, and they heard a sound, and then they never saw anyone. So you have to make sure you understand and your families understand that your person doesn't see the way you and I see. And one of the ways you tell that they're blind in the left eye is you simply move your hand towards the eye. And if the eye doesn't blink, they've lost vision in it. But again, this is rare, and it happens in the later part of the disease in stage 6, which is called severe dementia. Movement is different because of these visual changes. Now, some of you watching this love a roller coaster, and the person speaking hates a roller coaster. Doesn't make me happy, makes me sick for days. Same thing for a person with dementia. When we move them in a wheelchair, it is 1 step per second. And if the person with dementia says slow down, we slow down because it's affecting them. Because of their tunnel vision, moving them too quickly means I can change their blood pressure, I can change their heart rate, their breathing rate, I can make them combative, I can scare them so badly they can't function for the rest of the day. I make it more likely they will fall when I get them to where I'm taking them in the wheelchair. I make it more likely they will try to get out of the wheelchair because I'm scaring them so badly. So no matter what anyone around you thinks, it's one step per second. Now, if I slow down and the person is still upset, then what I might do is move to the side of the wheelchair and put my hand on the arm of the wheelchair and just pull the wheelchair along with me because I'm walking side by side with the person, and that may calm them down. But what I most want you to remember is when they say slow down, they mean slow down. Their brain cannot handle the amount of movement that's going on, and it's scaring them. And their world's pretty scary as it is. Because of this, their responses to us frightening them is either fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Now, my grandmother had a saying, Nicole, I don't know if they taught you this in the North, but my grandmother had a saying that was, you can get happy in the same clothes you got unhappy in. But people with dementia can't do that. Once we set off fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, we cause their amygdala to release chemicals. We cause their body to get ready to do one of those things. And because they have brain damage, their brain can't reabsorb that and calm them truly until they have sleep. So it takes them hours to calm down. And if I have a person who's naturally a fighter, this person's going to be combative with me. I'm not going to get in trouble. Chances are that person with dementia will get in trouble, and no one will recognize I caused this behavior to happen because I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing with them. Does that make sense, Nicole?
It really does. When you spoke about the wheelchair, that really kind of hit home for me in terms of how often we see, someone from behind just pushing the wheelchair and maybe walking too fast, and what that could be doing to the person.
And as I have taught this for the state in grants, I would actually put the staff member in a wheelchair, make them do this, and then I would push them as fast as I could go towards a stack of boxes and turn at the last minute. And I had grown people crying who had been professional caregivers for years. And they told me, each one of them told me, they never thought the person with dementia was being serious. And I thought, how serious do you have to be to say slow down?
Right.
And they cried when they realized how much they had scared these people that they loved and thought they were taking really good care of. So going slower, it's not only conversation, it's all kinds of movement around them. We have to constantly remember their brain is dying. And one of the easier ways to do it is to really think of it as brain cancer. I'll give you an example. My grandfather got lung cancer, and towards the end, it moved into his brain. And my grandmother wanted me to take her across the ranch to go see cows in another pasture. And right about then, my aunt came along, and she had a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. So we left them with Papa. What could possibly happen? We're on a ranch in the middle of nowhere. So my grandmother and aunt and I are over in this pasture feeding cows. And all of a sudden we hear woohoo and yahoos, and we look up, and my grandfather and my grandmother's car is tearing through a pasture, and he's not on the road. He's going through the pasture, and the car is jumping over rocks and hitting stuff, and the little boys are having the best time in the world. He is the best grandfather ever. And not one single moment did we think he did that on purpose, how terrible he is. Look at him. He could have hurt those little boys. The three of us looked at each other and immediately knew, oh my God, he has brain cancer. What in the world were we thinking? And we realized it was our fault, not his. He did nothing wrong. It was us who set everything up for something terrible to happen. And we do that with dementia people because we don't slow down to think. Their brain is dying because no one's taught us to think that way. And so for some families, for some of you watching, the only way you're going to get the rest of your family members on board is to help them understand this is a brain cancer. It's a brain cancer. It's killing the brain. And that may be the only way to get them to fully understand the dementia process that you're trying to learn about so you can be a better caregiver. That makes sense? It's been a long day.
It does. Yeah, no, it does. Thank you.
So when we approach a person with dementia, because I am always assuming their vision is impaired, I come towards them, and when I get in their personal space, I slow down, and then I come down until I'm in their eyes, and I can make sure that I'm looking eye to eye. Otherwise, what people with dementia actually see on the workers around them is they see boobs, bellies, and butts. Because if you don't turn around and all I can see is this, and you don't bend down to see me, all I see is the torso. And so that can make it hard for me to follow what it is that you're wanting me to do. Another thing is in conversation. We're going to talk about more about that in January when we're going to talk about why your loved one is having the conversation that they're having. But when we have a conversation with a person with dementia, it's always their reality, not my reality. They have brain damage. So if my mother thinks it's 1970 and that I'm her mother, it's 1970 and I'm her mother, and that's okay. That's all she needs to know, is that she's safe and that she's loved. So if I approach from the front and I don't quiz the person, then I've got a much better chance that I can have a normal conversation with them for the time that they're in based on their brain damage. And what I mean by that is I don't walk up to people and say, who's the president? What year is it? And what's the spelling of world backwards? And can you subtract 7 from 100? I don't do that. Nobody does that. I walk up and say, hi, what's your name? Where are you from? Who was your daddy? You a city girl or a country girl? I'm having just a social conversation with them. Now, as I work through the conversation, Nicole, eventually I'm going to go, hey, do you know what year it is? Just to see if they'll tell me what year they think they're in. And they'll either tell me they don't know, or they'll actually tell me the year they're in. And once I know the year they're in, I know what conversation I'm having. And if they grew up in the country, we'll have a conversation about growing up in the country. If they grew up in the city, we'll have a conversation about that, or whatever mom and dad did. But those are the communication techniques that we use. We stay in their reality because they're the ones with brain damage. Now, sundowning is something that some people with dementia have from stage 3 till they can no longer move. Some people never have it. Some people have it through stage 5 and stage 6. Part of it is human habit. Since time began, humans left one place and went to another. You could technically say all of us today sundown. We left where we were working and went to another place at the end of the day. So part of it is human habit and human evolution. We stopped farming and went back to our cabins. Before that, we stopped hunting and went back to our caves. So since time began, my father left in the afternoon and came home. My mother stopped homemaking and got ready for kids to come home. Primitive instinct, it's part of us that we do this certain thing at this certain time. And that is built on our circadian rhythms. So if you can understand that each cell in your body carries a blueprint for you, you can also understand that each cell in your body carries their circadian rhythm. But in you and I, they're all running together and in time. In somebody with dementia, because of brain damage, their circadian rhythms are running all over the place. Some forms of dementia, the person will sleep all night, have a hearty breakfast, and then sleep all day. Other forms of dementia, the person may take long, long naps. But regardless of those things, any of the dementias may have a sundowning effect where the person wants to leave the place they're in, even if it's the home they raised their children in and have lived in for 60 years, they want to leave that place at the end of the day and go somewhere else. It's a human habit and instinct. Now, women in late stage 5, they sundown and want to leave and go get their children, and they're very serious about getting children. That maternal instinct kicks in, and they are very difficult to redirect. Men of this generation, they need to go to work. They get up in the middle of the night and get dressed and want to go to work. And we can always redirect them. The plant had a water leak, the bridge washed out, it's a government holiday, your plant did something. We can always come up with a reason why you didn't go to work. And then very late stage people's sundowning is that they need to go home. And for those folks, we tell them, well, your mom called and she said it's raining out there and she doesn't want you to get wet. So you spend the night here and we're going to get you a bed. And then the person is calm and we're able to redirect them simply that way. But sundowning is common. It's something that we try to use a redirect on. Sometimes a redirect works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the person is able to handle being redirected. Other times they're not happy at all, but we do the best we can. We keep communication books and write down tips and tricks we've learned that may work today, doesn't promise it'll work tomorrow. If your loved one's at home, you can put a 3-foot black rug in front of your exit doors. That's something we used to do before we had alarm systems. You can also put a latch at the top of the door. You've never in your life been trained to look up to unlock a door, so that can help. Before we had alarm systems, Nicole, you're too young to know this, we used to paint giant stop signs and put them on exit doors, and so people with dementia wouldn't cross that. But sundowning is real, and it is one of the big stressors for families.
Tam, can you explain why the black rug would be beneficial for folks?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Because of the changes in vision, Nicole, that black rug looks like a big hole. So the same way Bugs Bunny pulled a hole out of his Acme box of holes, threw it on the ground, there was a hole. To a person with dementia, a large black space appears to be a hole in the ground, and they're not going to take the chance to step across that hole.
Great,
okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Now, cognitive reserve, and I'm not saying Albert Einstein had cognitive reserve. I just thought this was a funny picture. Cognitive reserve is when the person who has dementia is smarter than the testing materials. So most of the testing materials in dementia are made for the IQ of 100. But what if the person's starting IQ was 150? Well, Nicole, they have to lose 1/3 of their brain before they even function at the level of an average IQ. So there's significant brain loss. So what happens in people who are very highly educated or very intelligent is that they seem to have dementias that move slower in stages 2, 3, and 4. But once they become a stage 5 person, stage 5, 6, and 7 go rapidly because they actually have more brain damage than a person of normal intelligence. And that's what the effect of cognitive reserve is. Their brain thinks analytically. And because of that, they had extra brain that still functioned even though they had significant brain damage. And because of that, they were able to fool people. And that's what cognitive reserve is. The person is smarter than the testing materials. So what I want you to remember is that as you look at your loved one, as you look around at the folks that you work with and work for, no one's lying, no one's pretending, they're not faking, they're not acting like, they're not showing off. You are simply watching what any human with that type of brain damage will do. You would do it, I would do it. If I damaged my brain the same way that I saw today, I would behave that same way because each of my lobes also does those things that are heard in a person with dementia. So I'm going to show you some brain autopsy pictures here to help you understand how these lobes are damaged and how that affects your loved one. These gentlemen were both 72 years old. They had the same college degree. They actually worked in the same field. One aged normally and one did not. This is why we don't quiz people with dementia. This is why they don't follow our instructions. This is the lower side of the brain. This is why they slap or yell or say whatever they think. This is a slice of the frontal lobes. And this is why they can't communicate. It's not because they're trying to make our lives difficult or your life difficult. It's brain damage. And it's unlike any other disease. You can't tell it's there until it's already happened. The person's not doing it on purpose. You can't see how damaged their brain is. These are some of the new scans. This is a SPECT scan. And in this one, they introduce a radioactive dye into the bloodstream and then take a picture of it when it gets to the brain. And as you look at this, what people usually notice is two on each end looks very similar. But to a neurologist, this looks distinctly different. Starting on the left-hand side, that's Huntington's chorea, Parkinson's disease dementia, dementia of the Lewy body types. In the middle is mild cognitive impairment, or stage 2. Alzheimer's dementia is next to that. Frontal temporal dementia is next to that. And vascular dementia is there at the end. So most diagnoses can be made without autopsy. Most diagnoses can be made appropriately just by doing the correct testing. Everything you see your loved one doing is directly related to the brain damage that they have. Okay? That ought to depress everybody. Do we have any questions, Nicole?
Okay, so if anyone has any questions, please either you can come off mute or in the chat, you can type in your questions there.
Or not.
Pam, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
This is Marta. I work at Anthem. And Tam, you've talked about this in some of your other classes. And I'm curious about how you can answer in relation to as the brain is sort of slowly disappearing. But how, we talk with families as they're choosing to move somebody into our community about what to tell their loved one. And I think it's one of the biggest challenges that I face in counseling families about, how to talk to their loved one about the move, what to tell them, telling them anything. There's a whole range of ways that it can be approached. I just love to hear you talk about the different ways that you've seen families work with their loved ones through that process.
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, we don't talk about it. We don't ask 5-year-olds, is it going to be okay if we get you up early for the next 12 years and send you off to school? We just do what's right. And in dementia, you're doing what's right because it now requires medical care, which is what Anthem does. That's what memory care is. It's a medical social model to provide late stage, late end care for people with dementia. So first of all, we don't need to try to get their permission, because if I ask a person with dementia, hey, do you want to move out of this house? They're going to tell me absolutely not, because the brainstem knows if I move out of this house, everybody will be able to tell I don't know my way around. If you could put a camera on a person with dementia and watch them, they've gone from a 3,000 square foot home to they live where the food is, where the bathroom is, where the TV is, and where the bed is. They're in a small space because that's what's most comfortable to a person with dementia, is that smaller space. In a bigger space, they're lost in. So they're going to automatically tell you they don't want to move because others will know something is wrong. So we don't talk about it. We don't tell them. However, that doctor said you need rehab, and we're going to go to rehab, and it's rehab, or we're going to have lunch and we're going to come have a nice lunch with you, and sometime after lunch someone's going to take this person off to play activities. But when it's time to go to bed, we're going to have their bed covers, their favorite pieces of art, their chair. We're going to have all the 7 things that make home ready for them in their apartment, so that they're cozy that night and at least have the feeling of home. And then we are going to always blame the doctor for this move. So the family is never the one to blame. It is always our physician. It's their fault. They wanted you to have rehab. And that's who the family needs to continue to blame it on. Because if you let them blame it on you, then you can start to feel really bad. Now, if you've noticed during visits that the family comes to visit and then the person starts to get agitated and then the family leaves crying, the visit's too long. When you come to visit, you need to let them know, I'm only going to be here 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, I need you to come take my loved one to do an activity so that I can leave the building and not feel sick at my stomach. And so don't try to reason with your loved one, because there's three people you can't reason with: teenagers, because their brain doesn't work right, drunk people, because their brain doesn't work right, and people with dementia, because their brain doesn't work right. So we make the medical decision for them. And if it keeps them calm, they're coming here for rehab. We're coming here because the doctor said so. We're coming here to have lunch. And then you, the family, have to step back and let the team move forward and help your person get acclimated, help them get accustomed to the structure of the community. And you need to go home and rest before we lose you. And so for me, it's several things. And then, of course, it varies from person to person.
Tam, I have a question in the chat from someone they're curious if Alzheimer's is hereditary.
There is a small portion of Alzheimer's that is hereditary. In the early onset group, about 5% of those are traced to a family link. There's genetic testing that's available, but the problem with it, and where people get upset, is you could test and have those genes, Chris, but that doesn't mean it's going to turn on and become Alzheimer's. So are you going to spend the next 40 years of your life every time you walk in a room and don't remember what you went in there for, instead of knowing that's normal brain function, think, oh my God, now it started? So for me, it's frightening to think, because we don't have enough knowledge yet to be able to say, yes, this is going to happen with you, and how can we help you make your plans?
Yeah.
Did I lose y'all?
Pam, this is Amanda. I have a
Okay.
question.
Uh-huh.
So when you have, I've heard before some families struggle with the guilt. So how would you help a family understand when they go to visit their loved one in a memory care and they're laying on the guilt and they say, oh my goodness, my arm hurts so bad. But then as soon as they leave, they're using their arm, they're fine, but they're
You
laying on the
know,
guilt.
I mean, it's in every community, and it's something you really wish you could help families understand, is that when you're there, they're mad at us and we're doing bad stuff. But as soon as you walk back out the door, they're right back in there in activities, playing and having a good time. And so I never know if it's just human nature that we complain about it, or we do this, but we see it over and over again, where they tell the family these terrible things are happening and they hate it, they hate it, they hate it. And as soon as you turn around and leave, we can watch them on the video. They're having the best time. So I kind of think that's just a human nature thing. I've never been able to figure that one out, but it's a great question. And you see it everywhere. So if you think that's happening, call back and ask, like you, Amanda, go back and look at my loved one. We can take a video and send it to you of them playing, so that you're not so concerned about them. Because part of what you're dealing with is, if your loved one's in memory care, you're dealing with post-death grief, which means you're grieving for your loved one as though they'd already died, because the person you knew isn't here anymore. And then you're grieving because this isn't how it was supposed to be. You're grieving because of the cost and the finances. That's always scary. You're grieving, worried about your children and your grandchildren. You're grieving, worried about your own self-reliance and ability to age in place. There's so much grief going on. And on top of that is the guilt that you're responsible for taking away their independence. And that's because we do things differently in this country. In Europe, for example, if my mother was diagnosed with dementia, they wouldn't tell my mother. They would call the family together and tell us, and then we would be set up very much the way cancer is here, with a support group and a social worker and a pastor and all. Our families don't get that. We just hope they get to communities that have training where the staff understands what they're doing.
Yeah.
Tam, I have someone in the chat that wants your perspective on Daniel Amen's work.
I don't know who that is. Sorry.
That was, yep, no problem.
That
That
was
was
quick.
just Oh, I have another one. It says here, my loved one had a stroke, which affected the left side of his body. How much more does this impact all you have discussed? We are trying to figure out if behavior, language, vision is dementia more or effect of the stroke. Please advise. Thank you.
Well, the stroke would have caused vascular dementia, so that's where that's related. And then in vascular dementia that is stroke-based, those people tend to, because of the stroke activity, they tend to be more aggressive, more agitated. Also, they may wake up really slow and then sort of get going and be more alert in the afternoon, or they may wake up really alert and then sort of run out of energy as the day goes on. But they definitely have a different behavior. The other thing, Chris, that we see missed a lot is because specialists in one field of medicine will not cross into another specialist medicine. People who've had strokes, people who have heart conditions also have depression, and it's frequently not treated. So part of the behaviors you're seeing in your loved one may be untreated pain, may be untreated depression, can be anxiety, can be approach. It can be that you think there's been one stroke, and the minute you said that to me, I immediately thought, I wonder how many strokes there have actually been. So the stroke itself can causes dementia. That's a vascular dementia caused by an infarct, which is the medical term for stroke. And that person, when we look at research, what we tend to see is vascular dementia people tend to be more agitated, more aggressive, and least likely to be treated for depression, even though we know if you have a stroke or vascular condition, you have depression, and that's something we can treat. Also, it's more difficult for the vascular families. The Alzheimer's families going down the slippery slope. Every day there's a decline. The vascular person gets stabilized, and you think, oh, it doesn't get any worse, and then they will have another serious event and they stair step down. So it's very stressful for vascular dementia families just because of that aspect of the disease.
Interesting. Wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else with any questions that they want to either put in the chat or raise their hand?
Or not.
Quiet group tonight.
Since nobody else is talking, I just want to thank Tam. I really appreciated the answer to my question and this
You're
whole
welcome.
training. I can't wait to share this with our families. It was
Good.
great.
Good. Thank y'all for what y'all do. Appreciate it.
So I do have another one here. It says, you mentioned brain scans as a way to diagnose dementia. Are there any other medical equipment tests done for dementia, or is it done primarily through many paper quizzes?
No, there's actually a procedure. There's 28 different tests that should be done, including an MRI, a CAT scan, an EEG, an EKG. So, Chris, Texas put together the Texas Best Practices model, which is because we're such a rural state, it was designed that any family could read it and understand what their doctor should be doing. Part of the paperwork, the family could get ready themselves. And oh, by the way, here are the tests and the order the tests are given in order to make a diagnosis. And that is called the Texas Best Practices model. And I will send it over to y'all. And it's a PDF. It's about 34 pages or so when you download it and print it. You're not crazy. The older gentleman on the front is out of focus intentionally. I wasn't in charge of designing the cover, so I can't explain that. But I will send that over to you, and y'all can share that with your families that want to know how is a diagnosis made, because it's not made by doing the mini mental status exam. This is a specialty that requires a neurologist specializing in dementia, a geriatric psychiatric person, which is a specialty, or a geriatrician. And those are the people that you need to make proper diagnosing. If you don't have access to those people, the Texas Best Practices model tells you what tests should be done and why.
Okay,
so I'll send that over to y'all.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Any other questions? I'll give them a minute to type their question in or raise their hand.
This is Elizabeth. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
We just moved my mom into an Anthem facility 3 weeks ago, and I had a question about she seems to be having these episodes where she can't communicate with us much. They tend to last about 5 hours. She has to lay down on a bed, and she has to take she can't take anything orally. Just wondering, is that kind of are becoming more and more frequent? She had them 2 days in a row, yesterday and the day before. Is that something that's common with Lewy body? And if those become more frequent, is that a sign that the disease is progressing?
Well, the diseases are constantly progressing. But tell me again, your mother has a Lewy body diagnosis?
Correct.
Do you know which form of Lewy bodies?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
There's several different domains of Lewy bodies. There's not one form, there's multiple forms. Does your mother have the hallucinations?
They've just started.
Did your mother start with cognition issues and then movement issues?
I'm gonna ask my dad. He's on this call. Do you know, Dad? I don't know the answer to that.
The lobes of the brain.
Ron? I think she started with the cognition first.
Okay, let me give you a couple of websites that'll give you a staging tool and some really good information for Lewy body families. And Nicole and Chris, these are great resources for any of our families. If you go to nih.gov, that's the National Institutes of Health, nih.gov. In the search bar, type in Lewy, and it's Lewy for Dr. Frederick Lewy, Lewy Bodies, BODIES, booklet.
Okay, I did request 2 of those, but they only
Okay,
sent
you
me
can,
once. I gave one to my dad, so I'm waiting for the second one.
well,
But
it's
you
a
can also read it
PDF.
online.
It's a PDF, so you can print it out or you can read it online. You can also go to lbda.org, which is Lewy Body Dementia Association.org, and you'll get some wonderful information there. You can also look at Alzheimer's Society.uk. Alzheimer's Society.uk. They have a very friendly website. You can get some good Lewy body information over there.
Okay.
Okay, and just remember they're progressive dementias, and with Lewy body, we expect it to have Parkinson's join it, and then we expect Alzheimer's to join it as well. It's not one dementia, it becomes multiple dementias. Okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Good luck.
Thank you. We need it.
Any other questions for Dr. Tam?
Okay, and Nicole, I've already sent you the Texas best practices models, so y'all feel free to share that with everyone. I find it to be very empowering for families because it's written to where you can understand what the testing should be and realize what they did with your loved one was not the way we expect it to be done. And it should be able to help you recognize your loved one has a real brain disease. It's not on purpose and it's horrible, but you have really, really good people at Anthem who are dedicated in what is truly a life of service to others who are there to help you get through this. So feel free to reach out to them. Feel free to reach out to me. And we wish you all the best as you go through this, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. On our next topic, we're going to discuss what memory actually is, what it means, and what it's doing to your loved one and why they're behaving the way they're behaving. And that then will allow you to better understand how progressed the disease is, but also understand how to have a conversation with them. that actually makes sense, that can leave you with a feeling of meaningfulness rather than frustration. Does that sound good?
Great. And I did just get another question come across here before we jump off. It says, I have a dementia resident that reverts back to Spanish, her primary language. I noticed her family and some staff are constantly trying to correct her speech to speak English. Would you recommend to let her just speak in Spanish where she's
No.
comfortable?
She's supposed to be speaking in Spanish. She learned Spanish first, then English. The disease is removing it in a reverse order. I took Spanish in high school, can't speak a word of it. I cannot imagine someone trying to make me speak Spanish all day long. The woman is speaking Spanish. Our prayer is that the family members around her and at least a caregiver know Spanish to speak to her, because that's how we can communicate with her, is through Spanish. And if we don't have a Spanish speaking caregiver, we have to make a book that says basic things like doctor, nurse, sick, thirsty, bathroom, bath, medicine, food. We have to make a book for them with a picture, the word in Spanish and the word in English, so that we can communicate with this person. But people are going to go back and revert to their primary language, and that's the language we use with them. Okay?
Wonderful. I assumed that was going to be your answer. But I have another, she says, thank you. So some people I know revert to primary language when in lots of pain. Is someone just making a comment? They revert to their primary language when they're in pain.
They revert back to their original language because of brain damage. The brain is destroyed in the reverse order in which memory was learned. So they go back to their original language.
Yeah, I work with some patients. I work at a medical facility. I'm not medically trained, but I use two languages at work, and sometimes when they're very stressed or in a lot of pain, they can't use English.
Oh, that makes
So
sense. I've scream out in their native tongue.
That.
Yeah.
Yep, and I speak Spanish as a second language. So
Mhm.
yeah, I've definitely seen that.
Yeah. But they're going to go back to their original language, and then there will be no language left. And what's difficult is I've seen a family where he had been in the military and he had married a lady from Japan, but she decided, assimilating as an American, she didn't want her children to speak Japanese. She now has dementia. Nobody in the family speaks her language. So to have a worker who's bilingual, God bless you, woman, go get them. And, hopefully to have family around that lady who speaks Spanish to be able to communicate with her.
That's more difficult to find here in Minnesota.
We have a lot of it down here.
Yeah, not up here so much.
Okay. Any last questions before we jump off here? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Until next month at
Until
least.
until next month. Until our next.
We'll see you after the holidays then. Everybody stay safe. Remember, if you don't want to do holidays this year, it's okay. Call your family now and tell them we're not doing holidays this year. It'll take a big stress off. If you are planning to take your loved one out of an anthem, you need to understand they are used to structure. They're used to quiet. If your loved one goes home with you and you've got too many people there, they can become agitated. You may be surprised that social skills have declined because it is a progressive disease. So think about what's best for your loved one versus what feels good to you. Okay? And I hope everyone has a really good holiday. Bless you all.
Thank you so much,
Do you
Dr.
have
Tam.
the
We
date?
greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Nicole.
Yeah, yes. Next session with Dr. Tam will be Wednesday, January 10th at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Perfect. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dr. Tam.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome. Take care.